This is VOA Africa.
Hello, I'm Esther Githui-Ewart. It's Tuesday, February 9th. This is Africa 54. Due to the global outbreak of COVID-19, Voice of America is taking every necessary precaution to safeguard its employees. So our broadcast will look different today and in the near future as we, out of an abundance of caution, reduce our staffing at VOA headquarters here in Washington. We're working to help keep you informed about what's going on, and we appreciate you staying with us on Africa 54. South Africa has put AstraZeneca's coronavirus vaccine on hold amid concerns over its efficacy in preventing mild and moderate infections by a new variant. But experts say it should still be effective against severe disease. David Doyle has more.
Africa's worst hit country in the coronavirus pandemic has put a rollout of AstraZeneca vaccines on hold amid questions over their efficacy against a variant that's driving South Africa's second wave and has spread across the world.
For me, it's just a disappointment.
For Soweto resident Mabuto Dube, it's a blow. Vaccines are the only thing they've been waiting for, he says, so they can be set free.
Set us free. Vaccine.
1 million AstraZeneca doses arrived a week ago, but researchers in South Africa and the UK have now said the vaccine provides minimal protection against mild or moderate infection from the so-called South African variant among young people. And this does not just affect South Africa. The variant, 501Y.V2, is circulating in dozens of countries, including the United States. The AstraZeneca shot has also been the big hope for Africa, as it's cheap and easier to store and transport than the Pfizer vaccine. Britain and Australia have urged calm, citing evidence that the vaccine still prevents grave illness and death. AstraZeneca said it believed its vaccine could protect against severe disease.
The key thing is there doesn't appear to be any evidence that it's any less effective at preventing severe disease.
Dr. Mike Tildesley is an infectious disease expert at the UK's University of Warwick.
Vulnerable people, the older people who are more likely to develop severe symptoms, we believe that the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine will still work and should give a high level of protection.
However, the AstraZeneca trial's lead investigator in South Africa, Professor Shabir Mahdi, has said the study's outcome is a reality check, indicating that we need to recalibrate our expectations of COVID-19 vaccines. The concern is that if vaccines do not work as effectively as hoped against new and emerging variants, then the world could be facing a much longer and more expensive battle against the virus than previously thought.
David Doyle of Reuters filed that report. The World Health Organization says it is reviewing the AstraZeneca's COVID-19 vaccine, considering a South African study indicating the drug offers minimal protection against the new South African variant of the virus. The study, conducted by the University of the Witwatersrand, prompted the South African government to halt use of the vaccine for the time being. At WHO's Monday's briefing in Geneva, Director General Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus called the news concerning, but noted what he called some important caveats to that development. He said given the limited sample size of the Witwatersrand trial, the younger, healthier profile of the participants, it is important to determine whether the vaccine remains effective in preventing more severe illness. Tedros says it is becoming increasingly clear that manufacturers will have to adjust to the evolution of the virus and consider altering their vaccines to address the variants, as is done with flu shots each year. South Africa is set to start its immunization campaign with Johnson & Johnson's COVID-19 vaccine after data showed AstraZeneca's shot offered minimal protection against mild to moderate illness from the dominant local virus variant. The country had planned to start offering healthcare workers the AstraZeneca's shot soon, but put that plan on hold. A government fact sheet published on Monday said the Johnson & Johnson vaccine would be offered from mid-February. A senior health official says the pharmaceutical giant has agreed to speed up deliveries so the first doses would become available near the end of the week. South African Health Ministry Deputy Director General Anban Pile told state broadcaster SABC that the Johnson & Johnson vaccine is a good fit. Trials have shown it is highly effective in preventing hospitalization and death, and it can also be stored at normal refrigerator temperatures. A small number of British military personnel who arrived in Kenya for training are now in isolation after testing positive for COVID-19, according to the British High Commission. Emma McCarthy has the story.
A number of British soldiers in Kenya have been placed in isolation after having tested positive for COVID-19, the UK said on Monday. The troops had arrived for training exercises at a camp in Nanyuki, central Kenya, that are due to begin this month. In a statement, the British High Commission in Kenya said soldiers undergo checks before and after travelling to the East African country. And as a result, a small number of personnel were discovered to have COVID-19. They have been quarantined, and the Commission said an enhanced isolation drill had been implemented to prevent further infections. As part of the measures to contain the infection, facilities like the dining area were being deep-cleaned and soldiers had been put on rations. The UK trains around 12,000 soldiers at the camp each year.
Emma McCarthy of Reuters filed that report. There are wide variations in public perceptions in major Western countries over how their governments have handled the coronavirus pandemic, with the highest approval ratings in Germany and the lowest in the United States, according to a report from Pew Research. Henry Ridgwell reports.
In Europe and the United States, there are few areas of life left untouched by the pandemic. The toll on human health has at times been overwhelming. Economies locked down, societies frozen. But a survey by US-based Pew Research Center reveals very different public perceptions of how well Western governments have handled the pandemic.
In Germany, for instance, 77% of the public thinks that their country has done a good job handling the coronavirus thus far. In the other three countries in our survey, the US, the UK, and France, opinions are a little more split. So, for instance, in the US, 58% believe that their country has done a bad job of handling the pandemic.
The research was conducted in November and December 2020, before US President Joe Biden took office in January, and just as vaccination programs were beginning to roll out in the United States and Britain. The European Union has been far slower in getting its vaccination programs underway. At this clinic in Paris, there has been frustration over the delays.
We're mobilized. We're ready to welcome vulnerable people, except that we don't have the vaccines. Here we're in a fully equipped center, but an empty one. And we're, of course, angry.
France and other EU states have argued the vaccine approval process must not be rushed, fearing a loss of public trust. France has one of the highest levels of so-called vaccine skepticism in the world. A recent study suggested just over 40% of the adult population intend to get the shot. President Emmanuel Macron recently rejected calls for mandatory vaccines. The Pew survey questioned respondents on their attitudes to compulsory vaccinations.
In three of the countries where we asked that question, most people do not find that an acceptable idea. So, for instance, 75% in France do not like the idea of a government-mandated vaccine. The UK was the one country where we found more acceptance of the idea of a government-mandated vaccine. 62% find that an acceptable proposition.
In Britain, the vaccination programme is accelerating, with over 12 million people having now received their first dose. Britain has also suffered the highest number of coronavirus deaths in Europe. Local elections scheduled for May will offer another measure of public approval for the government's handling of the pandemic. Henry Ridgwell for VOA News, London.
Pakistan has started administering the COVID-19 vaccine, saying it's on track to achieve its targets. But as VOA's Ayesha Tanzim reports from Islamabad, the opposition says the government is doing too little, too late.
After a year of uncertainty, Pakistan finally began its COVID-19 vaccination campaign, kicking it off with a ceremony attended by the Prime Minister. Late Tuesday, a single dose of China's Sinopharm was administered to a doctor. On Wednesday morning, select hospitals readied their staff and areas designated as inoculation sites. But in many places, delivery of the doses from the government's vaccine bank was delayed by more than half a day without an explanation. In the first phase, the government plans to administer 500,000 doses, all of them donated by China. The first doses of the vaccine will be provided to the frontline health workers who get the maximum exposure. After that, old people and then the rest of the population. Provinces are overseeing the vaccine rollout. The opposition has criticized the government's pandemic response, accusing it of taking too long to order the vaccines. In Sindh province, controlled by an opposition party called Pakistan People's Party, the chief minister complained there weren't enough doses for frontline healthcare workers. The government, whose ruling party controls the 3 remaining provinces, defended its handling of vaccine distribution.
The vaccine is being equitably and fairly distributed among all the provinces. Of the 500,000 doses we have received, no one should think that we are giving away more doses to any one province.
In a country ripe with anti-vaccine conspiracy theories, doctors fear a bigger challenge might be to convince the population to receive their doses.
If Pakistanis don't get vaccinated, they will get repeatedly infected with COVID-19. It can be dangerous for the immune-compromised people, those with chronic diseases, the old people, or those with underlying conditions.
For the next phase, the government says it is getting 17 million doses of the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine through the global vaccine pool called COVAX. The US is among the contributors. With a population of 216 million, Pakistan will need a lot more vaccines to achieve the 70% immunization it is aiming for. Aisha Tanzim, VOA News, Islamabad.
In the latest World Malaria Report, the World Health Organization says despite the unprecedented challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic, countries worldwide held the line in protecting gains against malaria while saving hundreds of thousands of lives. However, long-term success in reaching a malaria-free world within a generation is not certain. In 2019, 409,000 people worldwide died from malaria cases, and the highest burdened countries in Africa have struggled to make significant or consistent gains since 2016. For more insight, Africa 54 health correspondent Lino Mudu spoke with Dr. Melanie Renshaw, Chief Program Officer at the RBM Partnership.
The beautiful message of the World Malaria Report is that we managed to significantly avert that doubling in malaria deaths. So we basically made sure that every mosquito net, or nearly every mosquito net at least, that was supposed to go out in 2020 went out. We switched the distribution of something like 180 million mosquito nets from fixed points to door. That meant a massive replanning and reprogramming, and the people distributing the nets needed PPE to make sure that there was no onward transmission of COVID. And so basically what we saw was almost every mosquito net that was planned to go out in 2020 went out. At the same time, the indoor residual spraying campaigns, everything we could do to make sure they went ahead, they more or less all went ahead. And in the Sahel, where they use something called seasonal malaria chemo prevention, more than 21 million children were protected by these drugs that they get once a month during rainy season. And so actually through fantastic country leadership in Africa, at all levels, from community level, Ministry of Health, presidential level, go ahead to do these mosquito net campaigns and to maintain malaria case management. There were some disruptions to case management, during lockdown. you couldn't get to a health facility because there was no transport. In some cases, we got a lot of delays in commodities coming into countries because, unfortunately, a lot of the commodities for malaria are not made in Africa. I think what COVID has taught us, the value of real-time data for decision making. I think the other lesson is, even the health systems in the US, in Europe have struggled with COVID. It shows the importance of investing in health. And I do hope that we will be able to keep the issue of malaria and other diseases such as malaria high on the financing agenda, because otherwise we will see more people dying from malaria in Africa than will be dying from COVID in Africa. So I think we have to invest in health, and we have to keep health and malaria high on that financing agenda and on that political agenda so that we can end malaria once and for all.
That was Africa 54 health correspondent Linomo Du speaking with Dr. Melanie Renshaw, Chief Program Officer at the RBM Partnership. The U.S. National Transportation Safety Board meets Tuesday to vote on a probable cause for the helicopter crash that killed basketball superstar Kobe Bryant and his daughter Gianna and 7 others in California last year. The NTSB had said there was no sign of mechanical failure on the helicopter and that the crash is believed to be an accident. Board members Tuesday could give recommendations for how to prevent similar disasters in the future. The helicopter was taking the 8 passengers to a youth basketball tournament amid heavy fog when it crashed into hilly terrain outside Los Angeles. We would like to hear what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we covered during the discussion on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our broadcast live on Facebook. Please watch and share our show with your friends. Also, check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Still to come, a Zimbabwean anti-corruption journalist turns to protest music. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Africa 54. The managing director of Nigeria State Oil Company says commercial terms are being renegotiated with major oil companies in a bid to keep the vital oil sector competitive. Angela Kumadu has more.
Nigeria State Oil Company is renegotiating the terms of its commercial contracts with major oil companies, according to its managing director, in a move aimed at keeping money flowing into the economically vital sector amidst a price collapse.
Our environment has changed.
Mele Kyari, who leads the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, or NNPC, said big oil would not invest unless it was getting an appropriate margin.
But we are very conscious of the fact that people have choices. Companies do make choices to leave countries when they have to. But we know that some of them will still stay.
Prices of oil fell sharply last year, though markets have since recovered. Nigeria, Africa's biggest oil exporter, relies on the sector for half its budget and 90% of its foreign exchange. But oil companies, including Royal Dutch Shell, ExxonMobil, and Total, are cutting billions in spending, shifting money to renewable fuels and focusing on the most cost-effective markets. Kyari declines to say what was specifically being negotiated, but said that new terms would be finalized before a pending oil overhaul bill is passed. The legislation, which Nigeria's parliament has promised to pass by May, is expected to define the sector for decades to come. But companies have criticized a draft for, amongst other issues, not doing enough to attract development dollars.
Companies will have the freedom to select between remaining under the commercial arrangement or to move into the new fiscal arrangement.
Kyari said the NNPC, which is already planning an overhaul of its Port Harcourt facility, would be seeking financing of up to $2 billion for its Warri and Kaduna refineries. The 3 refineries, which have a combined capacity of 445,000 barrels per day, were shut down last year until much-needed maintenance, repair and upgrades are completed. They have not operated at full capacity for decades, but NNPC hopes extensive works can cut Nigeria's hefty fuel import costs.
Angela Okumadu of Reuters filed that report. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan is facing domestic and international pressure to stop a crackdown on student protests that erupted after the Turkish leader's decision to install a new rector at one of the country's main universities. Dorian Jones reports from Istanbul.
Istanbul's Boğaziçi is among Turkey's top universities, and it appears under siege. A roll call of the names of dozens of protesting students detained by police is read outside the university's rector's office. President Recep Tayyip Erdogan's decision to impose a rector on the university has sparked weeks of demonstrations. Tensions escalated recently when police raided the campus, while dawn raids continue at student homes.
We want to protest democratically and peacefully, but they're still attacking us violently. Every day I fear that am I being followed, or will I be taken from home in a early morning, and many of my friends are also in custody now, so I am very worried about them also.
Students and teachers united in protest gather outside the rector's office, turning their backs symbolically on Erdogan's decision to name a new head of the university. Rectors are traditionally voted in by academics.
We are standing firm with our ideals of an independent university, a free university, and a democratic university, and our vigil that we do here every day at noon is a sign of that.
Since its inception, Boğaziçi University has been a centre for liberal thought. Today, it remains an oasis against what critics claim is the government's increasing intolerance. In a potential sign of things to come, the new rector has already banned the LGBT student society, prompting students to decorate trees in protest. But Erdogan is standing by his rector, calling the student protesters terrorists, accusing some of being part of an LGBT conspiracy. Ankara has responded to protests from the United States and others, warning them not to meddle in Turkey's internal affairs. The unrest is spreading outside the university campus, and those protests are being met with a firm hand. With neither side prepared to back down, the battle appears to be escalating, adding to concerns of where Turkey is heading. Dorian Jones for VOA News, Istanbul.
Zimbabwe's often arrested anti-corruption journalist Hopewell has turned to protest music, and a song he has released on social media is going viral. As Columbus Mavunga reports from Harare, the song Damn Loot is also being covered by other artists and linked in numerous posts, but some are warning Chinono may be arrested for it.
Lord of them loot, them loot, them loot, them loot. Hospitals, no medication, them loot.
Hopewell is singing to Zimbabwe news, corruption is causing the country's poor economy and its citizens' poverty. Several versions of the song have been released since its launch, and fans have posted their amateur videos. He's happy with the development, but he has an emphatic no to critics who say he's now getting into politics.
Locking up the people because they tell the truth.
But I think we have a role in society as citizens to ask the most important and pertinent questions about why things are the way they are. Why is it there is a broken state in Zimbabwe? Why is it the roads are bad? Why is it people don't have clean drinking water? Why is it 95% of Zimbabwe's potential workforce is not going to work?
President Emerson Mnangagwa's government says it has arrested Chingono 3 times since July last year for abuse of social media and not for speaking against corruption. Ruling ZANU-PF party youths say Chingono sang just to get sympathy ahead of his pending trial, not to oppose corruption.
Any talk of corruption without
taking evidence to the institutions responsible for fighting corruption, like ZAC and the courts, is mere grandstanding. And we call that anyone in Zimbabwe who has any evidence of any corrupt activity to approach the responsible institutions.
ZAC is the Zimbabwe Anti-Corruption Commission. Alexander Rusere is a former senior journalism and international relations lecturer at Harare Polytechnic College. He says he is not surprised by the way the government and its sympathizers have condemned Chimono's song.
Hopewell's messages have since proved to be effective because of the wider audience, the wider reach in terms of fighting corruption, government-instigated corruption. And the government is frustrated because it does not have strategies and methodologies of countering such an effective method.
Given the way Demloot has attracted hundreds of thousands of views and comments on social media, Zimbabwe's government may need something to counter it. But in the meantime, as fans continue to enjoy the song, some are warning Chimono through their amateur videos that he may go back to jail because of Demloot. Columbus Mavunga for VOA News, Harare, Zimbabwe.
With COVID guidelines banning large audiences, some Kenyan performers have taken to the streets to earn a living. One group, the Clan Acrobats, has been entertaining motorists stuck in traffic with juggling, balancing, and tumbling. Ugelwa Shalshwaye reports from Nairobi.
Being stuck in Nairobi's notorious traffic can be boring, but the Clan Acrobats are making it much more interesting. Due to the COVID pandemic, they have taken their act outside, performing for a captive audience waiting in traffic.
Us like acrobats, we deal with gathering, where people should gather. We entertain the big crowds. Now, due to this COVID-19, people can't gather together.
The ban on large gatherings has hurt the income of many Kenyan performers whose normal venues have shut down. The Clan Acrobats are managing to get by, entertaining motorists with different degrees of gratitude.
The good thing is they're waiting for the traffic lights. When they are red, that's when they do the thing. When the traffic lights are green, they move.
Kenya's Bureau of Statistics says unemployment has doubled under lockdown measures meant to stop the virus.
The youth unemployment before COVID was high, and during the COVID it has gone so much high that a number of youths that I know that we work under has lost job opportunities.
After a long day performing in traffic, the Clan Acrobats helped train the next generation. 10-year-old Alvin Meheso started with the group 4 years ago.
I want to be an acrobat when I am older because it is my talent. I want to earn money so that I can help poor people.
To keep themselves out of poverty, the Clan Acrobats plan to keep performing for motorists while they wait for a green light on pandemic restrictions to be lifted. Mogelwa Hlachwayo for VOA News, Nairobi.
And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, we thank you for watching.